The theme tonight is Make America Wealthy Again. That's Monday. On Tuesday, Make America Safe once again. Make America Strong once again on Wednesday. And then Thursday, Make America Great once again. So a couple of things. President's talking about unity, tore up his speech, as you mentioned. He also, the Trump campaign, according to the New York Times, is concerned that some of the other speeches will be too fiery. He wants them to recognize this moment. I want you to hear a little from the president last night. He only spoke for 6 minutes. It was a Oval Office address. Cut one.
Thankfully, former Trump is not seriously injured. I spoke with him last night. I'm grateful. He's doing well, and Jill and I keep him and his family in our prayers. We also extend our deepest condolences to the family of the victims who was killed. Corey was a husband, a father, a volunteer firefighter, a hero, sheltering his family from those bullets. We should all hold his family and all those injured in our prayers.
So in those 6 minutes, he mentioned, we got to turn down the rhetoric. Paul Pelosi, he mentioned the kidnapping of Governor Whitmer, which we found out was a little bit questionable, but of course, you got to take care of every threat. Didn't bring up Steve Scalise. And do we need to put anything on the level of an assassination of a former president who might be the next president? Was that necessary?
I thought it missed the moment. Obviously, he's under a lot of scrutiny every time he talks now after that debate performance. When you hear former Trump and he says going to the battle box, not the ballot box. I mean, it was, whatever. It's a 6-minute speech on a teleprompter. But we are focused on that now because of post-debate. I did think that he had the opportunity to maybe say, even I should stop using words that trigger some of this. He just had a fundraiser the other day where he said he wanted to put Trump in a bullseye. And there's a little bit of self-own here, but I didn't hear it in that speech. I think he had to do something because he's not going to get a lot of breakthrough this week.
I agree. And it's always a tough situation. You're in it all the time. What's the tone after a tragic event that could have been a lot worse? We know the shooter was way too close. He got in with that perimeter. It makes no sense. Local authorities climbing up the wall. They see him. They see each other. The local policeman drops off the wall, and then the shooter becomes an attempted assassin. So he picked up the pace, you would think, of his shot. Maybe he was going to wait longer in the speech to take his shot. We don't know. But all this interaction, the Secret Service, that's another element of it. But then when you see people go out of their way to say almost like he deserved it, I was a little struck by what was going on with Martha Raddatz and George Stephanopoulos. I don't know if you've heard this. Cut 27.
As you point out those statements from J.D. Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy, of course, President Trump and his supporters have contributed to this violent rhetoric as well.
Well, absolutely, George. We were just looking back this morning at some of the things that former President Trump has said. He warned last March of potential death and destruction if he were charged by the Manhattan District Attorney. Our country is being destroyed as they tell us to be peaceful. Trump in January warned of bedlam in the country if the criminal charges against him succeeded. And of course, in March, he said, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
So she felt it was the perfect time to run through these events where Trump has spoken directly. And we know the bloodbath in particular has been characterized incorrectly. And it's since we see all the other times people have used that term. It's a term used not as actual shooting somebody. But your reaction to that timing? That was scripted.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't think that that's where America's mind is. I think, if anything, a moment like this humanizes the former president more. Anybody that's looked through the possibility of death. Listen, I talked to him the other day, and he's lucky to be alive. He acknowledges that. He's blessed. He turned his head. The reason he was turning that way is to see a graphic that he brought up later in his speech. It was a graphic about border security, and he was going to do it later, but he decided in that speech he was going to ad lib and say, hey, guys, can you bring this up? They bring up the graphic. He turns his head at that moment, and that's why the bullet that you see in that picture from Doug Mills in the New York Times just grazes his ear. I think that bullet that you see, their experts are saying the reason you see it is it was slowed down after it grazed the top of his ear.
I did not hear that. That is amazing. And Doug Mills is going to be on television on Fox News shortly. He talked to the Washington Times and he spoke to the New York Post yesterday. And what he said is this: he said that reality is just setting in. I rarely look away from the crowd. Had I done it in that moment, well, we would not be talking today, would we? So we realize that. The other moment that I think is understated is Melania Trump's letter. I thought that was brilliantly written. In fact, I saw an article. Did AI write it? It was so good. And they're putting it to the test. Did AI write it? And just to paraphrase, what I thought was really telling is, you think he's a political animal. You think he's a political machine. But, he's a father. He goes, our reality, our world would have, Barron's world and my world would have changed had that monster been successful.
Yeah, I thought it was really powerful too. And I wrote a piece for foxnews.com about how that could be a blueprint, for this convention and for going forward. I thought it was really eloquent and really talked to our, better angels. History is often, and you go back to history as well, kind of a guideline. The Reagan shooting in 1981 happened 70 days into his term. He gets shot outside the Washington Hilton. And, he jokes, honey, I forgot to duck, and, is heading into surgery and says, I hope the surgeons are Republicans. And it became legend what happened. It humanized him. At that point, he was not that popular.
Right.
He became really popular and went on, obviously, to win 49 states in 1984. But it's a changing moment. There's a challenge. There's a choice here and an opportunity, really, for the former president to take it.
Bret Baier right here with me in Milwaukee. We're covering the RNC. Day one is tonight. There's already a lot of action. Talk about history. I could not believe this. I did not know what happened in Milwaukee, but Teddy Roosevelt was shot in Milwaukee. He was running in 1912 as that third-party Bull Moose candidate. And in it, Jane Hampton Cook, who used to work in the Bush administration, has now become an esteemed author, does great work. And she's going to be on with us later on today. But this is what Teddy Roosevelt said. He was about to give a speech. He got shot, and he wanted to see the guy. He's like, don't hurt him. He goes, what were you thinking? And then he gets shot through the chest. And one of the reasons she said that I didn't get hit was because I had a 50-page speech in his pocket, and they hold up the actual speech with the hole in it. He says, I don't know whether you fully understand, he addresses the people, that I have been shot. Fortunately, I have my manuscript, so you see I was going to make a long speech. Then there is a bullet, and there's a hole in the sheet. There is where the bullet went through and probably saved me from what's going into my heart. The bullet is in me now, so I cannot make a very long speech, but I will try my best. I give you my word, I do not give a rap about being shot, not a rap. That's the epitome of toughness.
It's only a couple.
Finally dragged him. It happened in Milwaukee.
Couple of blocks from here,
By the Starbucks.
Miller Life Theater. It used to be the Milwaukee Theater.
I understand there's a plaque.
Yeah, and so he gets shot by the saloon keeper, and walking out of the hotel, and then goes over and gives that speech. It was that speech and an eyeglass case in his pocket that prevents him from getting killed.
So
But
listen,
you can't take down a bull moose, I think is what he said.
right. So, and the other thing that you'd appreciate, her analogy is with what he says. You can now compare him to Washington. You can compare him to Washington and Teddy Roosevelt. It does this. They go back to at age 23, 1750. George Washington, in a letter to his brother, said, quote, in the land of the living, by the miraculous care of Providence that protracted me beyond all human expectations, for I had 4 bullets through my coat and 2 horses shot underneath me, yet I am unhurt. Every officer died in that battle in the French-Indian War. So he always felt as though he was never going to get killed in battle, and that's the way he acted.
So I do think that there is something about divine intervention, and you're probably going to hear that in this speech. He, I think, acknowledges that some aspect of this is bigger than him, and think about that for a convention, that was trying to bring together social conservatives who had a problem with the abortion platform on the, how it was being structured. All of this then kind of goes by the wayside, and there's this galvanizing effect for the people here.
And also, I think what hit the president is one of the one of his followers, one of the voters, one of the supporters that was shot was in the same tent as him.
Yeah.
So here he is with his ear bleeding. He's got to be painful. But then he sees this other man struggling for his life. I'm not sure if it was Corey Compertor who lost his life, this firefighter that jumped over his family and died, or if it was the other two victims. But man, when you see that right in front of you, it's not like he was brought up in war. As everything that the president's experienced, I'm sure he's never experienced that before.
But that photo of his fist in the air, I asked him about what made him do that. And he said, I was down on the ground. They were holding me down. You should see my arms. They're black and blue. These are big guys. And he said he got up and he wanted to say something at the microphone. He wanted to talk.
Right.
And they said, no, we got to move. And he wanted to make sure the crowd knew he was okay and that he was fighting on. I mean, I just don't think a lot of people in that moment think to do that, but that's him 100%.
Right. I just think that there's people, if you train for that, if you're in West Point, you're doing it every day. The goal is when you get into battle that you're ready to roll with them. That's no guarantee. But I remember I asked Dana White, I was talking to Dana White 3 weeks ago at a UFC event, and I talked about that moment when Trump walks out and you walk out with him. He goes, it's thunderous like nothing else I've seen. I go, where'd you rank his toughness compared to the people you see every week? And he said, by far, bar none, the toughest. And I go, in what respect? He goes, in every respect. What he's going through personally, what he has done, what he's been through for this country. He goes, when I know when someone goes in the octagon, they're already tougher than 99% of Americans. Dana White shocked me by saying that he is the toughest. And didn't he show that? I mean, that's the way he comes off. He could talk tough, but when you are tough, that's revealed.
Yeah, which is why Dana White is introducing the former president in the speech, I think, Thursday night.
Yeah, he told me in 2016, all his team was like, he was asked, Trump called him and says, you don't have to, but I need someone. I want to know if you want to speak at the RNC. And he said, if you want me to, I will. And his whole staff, they said, no, it's going to be bad for UFC. It's going to make us political. And he said, that's my friend. I'm not asking your opinion. I'm doing it. And I said, if you're asked again, will you do it? He goes, absolutely. So obviously, it's not easy being Donald Trump's friend a lot of times when you're in business.
That's right. Yeah.
But Elon Musk is now signed up. He's going to be a supporter.
So are
Ken Hackman,
Steve Schwartzman, a lot of people.
These are billionaires.
Yeah. Bill Ackman. There's a lot of folks who are now signing on. And I think he got a lot of calls over the last 24 hours from people that are on all sides of the political spectrum, wishing him well. I will say this. The investigation part is really screwed up. Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas was on another channel. Really didn't sound like he had any thought about anybody being fired or anything going wrong. This is going to be a big, big deal, how this happens, how that guy is in clear view of the former president 150 yards away. I've covered a lot of rallies with presidents, and that just doesn't happen. It does not happen. And
Right.
it's something's got to, we have to hear from the Secret Service, and we haven't yet.
All right, Bret Baier, thanks so much.